Good afternoon and welcome. Today we'll be discussing transboundary air pollution, climate change, and the ozone layer. Now, recently in Guyana, there have been reports of the Saharan desert dust being in the country, and many persons were actually surprised. They've never heard of the Saharan desert or even the dust traveling for so far. For many, the question remains as to how did the dust travel so far? Today we'll be looking at some of those issues and at some of the protocols and conventions that have been adopted by nations, including Guyana. Now, while it is admitted that some countries they have signed on to these protocols and conventions, yet we see a lot of there are instances where countries are actually prioritizing their own economic development as opposed to ensuring that the environment is green, it's healthy, and it's safe for all of us at large. I am Nirvana Ramdas and I'll be taking you through this presentation. There have been international efforts, as I mentioned before, to combat the issue of long-range transboundary air pollution. We have the Stockholm Convention, the Rio Declaration, and also the Geneva Convention, which was actually very effective in where countries actually came together and cooperate to reduce emissions. But despite international agreements, challenges remain, including difficulties in enforcing regulations, lack of accountability measures, and economic concerns related to emission reduction efforts. There have been some successes in reducing certain pollutants, such as sulfur emissions and so on, with the transboundaries. So all was not lost in this type of preventative measure. Now let's take a look at climate change. Climate change is all wrong. We've all heard the oceans are getting warmer. We're experiencing warmer climates even in Guyana. So how is that affecting us? It's negatively impacting businesses, our environment, and everything at large. Now, most persons would think to themselves that climate change is as a result of warmer temperatures, volcanic activity, and all that. But do you know that human beings actually contribute to climate change? So human activities in particular is a major contributor to climate change. Industries such as the agriculture industry, even the upcoming oil and gas industry here in Guyana, those are some of the factors that negatively contribute to climate change. Now, there have been a number of treaties and conventions, as I mentioned. You have the UNFCCC, which was established in 1992, and it aims to stabilize greenhouse gas emissions to prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. You had the Kyoto Protocol, which actually sets quantitative restrictions on nation. But it's interesting to note that the US did not ratify this convention, and they cited because developing nations were not a party to that treaty. And so because of that, the Kyoto Protocol really has not been that effective. But then recently now we have the High Seas Treaty, which will come hopefully be ratified by nations in 2025. Now that the ocean is known as really the hub, in for want of a better word, that actually controls carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So having the High Seas Treaty is quite important for nations. Let's take a look at the ozone layer. We have the Vienna Convention, the 1985 Vienna Convention, which laid the groundwork for international cooperation to protect the ozone layer. Now, this was actually quite successful because it emphasized the needs for parties to take appropriate measures to prevent adverse effects on human health. And then we had the Montreal Protocol. This was a landmark agreement which emerged as a response to growing concern over the ozone layer and its depletion. The Montreal Protocol was actually quite successful. It was a landmark agreement, and it really reduced the usage of ODS. Notwithstanding, there are challenges where the ODS are still being pushed in Asian countries on the black market, but overall this treaty has been quite effective. Now, despite progress in the ozone layer protection, broader environmental challenges such as climate change and transboundary air pollution persist. Economic interests and geopolitical tensions sometimes overshadow international cooperation efforts. Moving forward, there is a call for stricter enforcement, greater focus on cleaner energy sources, and stronger penalties for non-compliance to ensure environmental treaties are effectively implemented and adhered to by all.